Hello and welcome to the Gaago Analysis Show. We are now on episode 5, and as you can see, I am alongside the famous and great Séamus Hickey. If I was closer to him, I'd definitely shake his hand. Unfortunately, Séamus had a little accident over the weekend.
Thumbs up, Noel. Unfortunately, Club Hurling comes a cropper. Yeah, league matches, broken hand, c'est la vie.
And was it your fault or was it the forwards' fault?
It's my own fault for trying to play in the forwards, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you know what? That feeds in nicely that we're not actually going to have a special guest on, so we're definitely going to be very biased towards the backs and probably hypercritical about the forwards. So it's probably a good introduction. Interesting couple of games over the weekend and a few more to come this weekend, Séamus.
Yeah, so both championships now have actually set up really, really well for the last weekend. Leinster was been blown open a number of weeks ago, but what Cork are after doing to Munster is amazing. It's electric, so it's completely turned the championship on its head because we were there with Gaago against Clare in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, super game, but the whole of Cork was convinced that their year was done, and here we are 3 weeks later, and they're not only are they alive, but they're dangerous.
Yeah. But also the fact is that day we met in Welsh Park, it was nearly as if Cork Hurling were gone back 20 years, which is amazing. And now we see him, putting up incredible performances. The obvious thing here is everyone is looking at different permutations across who wins or who draws and head to head.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah, for a round robin, and that's the nightmare. The nightmare is the round robin last weekend is a lame duck. I can't remember any last weekend in the Munster Championship that has been like that. And now Leinster this year is very much that case. So there's so many things up for grabs. There's Leinster final up for grabs. There's the third place in Leinster up for grabs. There's it's open season.
And what's even more interesting is the fact that over the last number of years, a lot of the traditionalists will be very skeptical about this going forward. And I certainly have been in that mix as well, maybe because Waterfords have been doing particularly well. But I was always of the view the knockout championship is where it was at because it brought a different sense of energy and obviously something on the line. Whereas with this year now, it seems to be a very different animal.
Yeah, and it captures the competitiveness of the actual league. So the league, I would argue, has been a super competition in terms of competitiveness in Division 1 for the last 3 years. I think it's served up really, really good fare, really good level of competition. And I think the round robin captures an element of that league system where you're playing the best teams regularly, and we get good games to watch. So for me, I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We'll get stuck into it now because we could sit here for the day talking about the next weekend and the permutation, who wins and who draws and who's gone. But something that I noticed over the weekend, and I definitely want to get your opinion on it because you were probably a lot closer than I was we spoke about bodies and the swarm tackle and all those various things over the last couple of weeks. But the one thing that I've really noticed this week was how the turnover is becoming more and more important, but particularly for goals. I think that Cork scored 310 from turnover. So from Tipperary having possession, all of a sudden they lose possession for various reasons, but they concede 310 off it. And similarly enough, Clare scored, was it 212 or something along those lines from Waterford coughing up possession. So for me, that's a really interesting kind of stat. So if we look at some of this was the second goal for Dublin, who I thought were absolutely fantastic, by the way. Billy Ryan gets it here, right? And if we watch the play, Kilkenny are naturally enough pushing forward, as we see, because they want to create the overlap and the overload, and they run inside. But unfortunately, when it breaks down, the opposite happens. So when they break down, they're all the Kilkenny players are on the wrong side of the ball. So if we're corner back and they're teaching kids, it's stay on the goal side, So they're actually caught on the wrong side. And as you can see here, it's 5v1 in that clip, right? And as it progresses, in fairness to Billy Ryan, you'd have to admire him. He actually tracked all the way, but just couldn't get there in time. Another aspect of this is that was turned over on the 65, as in on the far 65. And in fairness to Dublin, they broke in numbers and it was a really, really good goal. So regardless of where they get turned over, it is a threat.
Yeah, it's just how vulnerable you are when you've got numbers committed to going forward. And here we're the same case with Waterford. Like it's when you've numbers committed going forward, and that's what you need to do to break the line of defence.
You absolutely need.
You're so vulnerable then when you lose it. Like,
so you can see here, in fairness, like it is the right thing to do, and I completely agree with what you're trying to do. Ty gets on the ball, gives it to Jamie, but the problem that happens here is Jamie actually takes a touch and he looks up, but there's nobody to give it to. Why? Because all the people that were running had run into the same small area, so you can see it there, a little boxed off. So he doesn't have many options. Unfortunately, it's a wayward pass Paddy Curran doesn't get to at time. And in fairness, you have to admire Clare. They're on it straight away. You'll see the runners here. But Darrell Owen, in the middle in particular, makes an absolutely fantastic run.
It's a double blow, isn't it, for Paddy Curran? Because that's Paddy Curran's man gone through there. And so it's very hard on Waterford, the full back line there, to track runners from midfield on a turnover.
The 4 Waterford players now are behind the ball, which again is based off the turnover. And there's so much room inside now for Darrell Owen to run into.
Yeah. Even the cracking hand pass from Rodgers as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't score it, but maybe that's probably a bit of a stretch. But I'd give myself some of the credit to say I might score it. This is another turnover that I really, really liked. It's something that Dan Shannon used to do all the time in training. If the player got the ball ahead of him, the wing back, he would just float to the other side of the pitch as an option. But in fairness, Davey sees it. He puts a tackle in. Ty gets the ball. There is an option down the line, which most players are looking to try and keep it out in the middle, play it down the line and just keep possession. Unfortunately, he gives a bad pass to Jamie. It's picked up. Davey, who made the actual tackle initially on the corner back, keeps his run moving and gets into space. Shane O'Donnell is obviously very intelligent, but the play here, he actually doesn't even go to catch the ball. He basically blocks the Waterford player in behind, pretends he's going to catch it and leaves it bouncing to the hand. Same thing here. Stephen Bennett picks up a good ball, good break. They have 3 options. You go back the way you are, you give the jack. The one thing that you shouldn't do is go close to the sideline and shoot off the back foot. Because that's exactly what Clare wanted to do. Whereas if we look at what happens in the opposite way, Colin goes up, fumbles it slightly, bit of composure here. Key thing is head up, looks for Duggan as the outlet. Duggan knows that he needs to get on the ball, but keep it in front of him.
Yeah. And Conlon has grown, hasn't he? He's grown so much in that 6th position. So he was the extra man back there dropping onto his full back line, and then his vision, his distribution of ball has improved year after year. I was doubtful of him at 6, but he's getting better all the time.
And this is from the turnover, from the bad shot. It's hard to believe. And because it was turned over and Stephen is out of position, it allows Rodgers to create space. Now, if Tony didn't actually want to take the goal on, they still had bodies out on the 21.
Yeah, it was a goal. It was a goal from possibly either McCarthy or Rodgers if Tony didn't shoot himself. Yeah.
So you're going to run through us a little bit here, Séamus.
Yeah. So this is more turnover. So this is again Tim trying to work out the ball, and then Connolly. It's just there's got a couple of these things where if you win it at the back and you're going to work it out, there's very little room for error. And when Connolly is aggressive on the clean, we saw with Limerick against Cork, the turnovers that they had and the 2 goals that they got from it. But Connolly's aggressive here in the tackle, wins the turnover, and then as soon as he wins the turnover, we've got a really good crossfield run. I think it's Hoggy pulling his man across the goal to give himself an option. But Connolly's such a dynamic player. He wants goal. He's got his head down and he's going for it. He runs into the space that is vacated by Hoggy, and it's so hard to defend it.
And to be fair, again, it's the same thing. The lads are actually caught. The tip lads are actually caught on the wrong side. So when it's breaking down, they're actually after going too far forward beyond the play that they're never going to get back. And this is another one here. Bo has the ball, right? That ball is never on. It's really not on. You have to consider, what are you going over across the pitch for? It's like if you're in the full back line, you keep it away from the goal on the far side. So he crossed the ball. Lahan at the top of the picture, in fairness to him, when he came on, he was, as you would say, electric. But because they win the ball and it breaks down, it creates now a 4v2. And I actually think the tip backs do a really good job. I know it's a goal, but they made Cork make the decision. What forwards want you to do is for you to make the decision for them. and then they can just pop. Where I actually thought Tip in that instance, even though it was a goal, they actually held their position and made Cork take it on essentially.
And listen, in Bo's defence there, right? So it is a cardinal sin to put the ball across the middle in your own back line, right? Because it creates way too much like opportunity for the other team to go straight down the guts if they intercept it, right? But he clearly didn't see Barrett. So there was so many bodies there between the 45 and 65. He thought he had a clear shot across the field. And Barrett wasn't even looking, so he was facing the other way. But for me, it's the kind of thing when you're under pressure from a back line, you're looking for the hopeful ball as opposed to the smart ball. And then, there's no comeback when you're talking about trying to stop a guy like Barrett. There's no room for it.
Yeah. But like, in fairness, like in that instance, are you better off to nearly lump it or carry it?
So I've got two clips here then, right, about working the ball out from the back line. Okay, so lumping it only works if you're set up for it. So like, I have a pet peeve on short puckout. So here we have a short puckout for Waterford, right, and this kills me. All right, so the short puckout is not meant to succeed by giving it to a cornerback and the cornerback standing and hit it. Our goalies can hit it further than our cornerbacks and better placed than our cornerbacks. The three Clare halfbacks here are off their men. They've sat back because midfield is dropping to protect them. Their half forward line are dropping to protect midfield. So it's bad to hit it long onto a man in space in the opposition, right? But it's worse to hit it down on top of six. Unless you're set up for that. And I remember we were talking last week about Waterford keeping it narrow and then breaking out. There's no shape here to deal with the lump, and here's, I've got Jimmy Ryan. Look at this for a beautiful ball. Like, he's got time to stand, hit, one bounce into the hand. Shane O'Donnell is hurling out of his mind for me at the moment. He's just class. And the way Clare fired the ball around was brilliant. So Reedy hits another ball in. This is again about working the ball out from the back. And we're talking about turnovers in the key. Safety for defenders is your goalie and the space on the sides. There's only one place here that's not safe for Waterford, right? And it's out the middle into contact. And as soon as you hit contact, you're slowed down. You've got no go forward. Then we've put ourselves at all sorts of risk and danger here. We're very lucky Duggan doesn't plow through everybody and get a goal. If you don't work the ball out through the hands systemically, like, so you can't have one player not connected to the other, because we had examples there of Tyg running off the shoulder from 6. That's a good way to play it, but then you have to then put ball into space from the platform. But it's just it's a pet peeve of mine for defenders when the standing lump is the last resort for mostly when you're playing off of you're after turning over ball in your own half, or you don't have a setup up the field. But if it's your own puckout, I don't think you have a defense there. Like, as in, you there's no excuse for standing and lumping, and I see it in club hurling a lot. And fellas are sick at me in the dressing room talking about, like, so a short puck out is a success for our team if we can get the cornerback to stand and strike it, because we're better set up than there.
And also the fact is that Clare, in fairness, and when Connacht was with him back in 2013, that was their whole kind of philosophy. It was like, allow the opposition come on to us, and we'll kind of break them down on their own possession. So he was happy enough for, we'll say in this instance, Waterford, to have the puck out, leave them have the puck out, like, let them make the decision, but we'll turn it over and we'll score as a result.
And Connacht actually coaches that aggressively. So it's that notion of you commit one player to get contact immediately when that player has the ball in his hands. And then if that ball spills, then you get the extra players in for the swarm. But you stand off to bait it, then you attack it aggressively when the ball is short ball is played. And you saw it actually again. So Limerick and Cork last week, Patrick Collins got picked for 2 goals, and both from Sean O'Donoghue, who was turned over. So it's it's an uncomfortable place for a back, because you and I have both been on the receiving end of short puck outs, and it's hard to work it out when the other team is really well set up and their forwards are hounding you aggressively. But it's still you're hoping that you're well coached enough to to not put yourself in those situations. And like you said, Clare scored 3-10 from turnovers. That's outrageous.
The big thing, Séamus, as well, like if you're in that position and like it's a lonely enough place when you're getting a sharp puck out, you need options. Like the big thing there is you need your backs, you need your forwards, you need midfielder coming short, going into space, because if you're actually not getting an option, there's very little you can do about them. And you can even see more and more players this season are starting to carry the ball and get caught for steps because they're essentially trying to do the right thing, but the options just aren't available.
Yeah, but that's good. That's good setup from the other team. Like in Clare, we saw Tig and Jamie in our clips there. Look up the field, no option, and as soon as you hesitate, you've lost that half second and you're closed. So, that's good setup from Clare in my eyes.
The obvious thing here is at times you're no better off. Like in the past, if you over carry the ball, the opposition would nearly see that as like a win. Whereas now with the turnovers, being caught for over carrying is not necessarily detrimental as what it was in the past. Because if you lose the ball or you throw the ball away or you drop the ball, teams are gone. Whereas it's a slow down, it's allow you to get players back.
I know, but isn't that the balance though? Like if there's no risk, then it's possession hurling, and we turn into football. Like so, it's endless hand pass. And I'd be kind of critical enough about the way Limerick are putting the ball through the hands around midfield, and there's often 4 hand passes or 4 short passes before the ball is struck, and it just slows down everything, and it gives the opposition every time you do a short pass, unless you execute it perfectly, it goes to hand. There's opportunity for turnover, opportunity for tackles, and I suppose to spill the ball. But one of the things that I was going to move on and look at from an attacking point of view, right? Where two of us are going to enjoy this, right? But it's just what has come over Cork in the last couple of weeks, in the last 2 games, is as a defender looking at it, right? I've got to pick out so we're just going to look at the Cork goals from the weekend, right? Just as a defender, it's kind of terrifying when a team is willing to attack from anywhere. Because there was a number of times Cork they weren't in a good position to attack here. So like here we have, in the first half, Shane Barrett gets on the ball. He's so dangerous every time he touches it. So out to Kingston, he throws a bit of a shimmy. Like we've got how many Tipperary players around here? Luke Mee gets on the ball. We freeze it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're well set up here as a tip defense. Okay, so you're thinking, we even inside we've got a man-to-man situation. It's just that they're just not closing quick enough from Tipperary's point of view. But when Alan Connolly, he kind of moves cleverly into the space that is there, maybe 5 yards off of Ronan Maher. But this give and go is like, there should be no goal option here, right? But the give and go creates it. Yeah. And that's purely a mindset. And I remember Kieran Kingston started this, right, with Cork in the league a number of years ago, where they were just like unashamedly going for goals. And here their puck-out placement has gotten way better. Like this Collins to Barrett connection is becoming very, very dangerous. But we've highlighted Connolly here, right? His angle is taking him to the sideline. He's taking him away from goals. We've loads of space.
As a back, that's what you want.
Yeah, that's great. We've got him to the sideline. We're fine here. Like you're not really thinking he's going to have a serious go at you from there. But it's the caliber of player that Connolly is, and it's what makes him really exciting. He'll try this 3 or 4 times a game, and even if he only succeeds once, he's got a goal because he's so aggressive. You can miss those 3 times as a forward, but as a back, you can't afford to miss once. And again, we'll go back over the ball pass again, just to highlight the fact that so Barrett is looking up the field. He's not even particularly concerned with the play of the ball. He's out of the view. You can see there the players between Bo and himself. But what I think is so hard to defend is the unselfishness of the forward play in Cork at the moment, right? And I think Shane Barrett is critical to it because he's often the fellow who's doing the hard running, right? So Hoggy's to his left. He could go, he'd try and split the 2 defenders there or throw it out to Lehan across the way. But it's the unselfishness that makes them so hard. So when Bubbles and Séamus Callanan and Jason Ford and even to John McGrath, I thought the tip forwards for a good period of time towards the end of the teens there, the 2015 to 2020, they were probably the hardest forward line to mark because they were always looking up to see where's the goal opportunity. And they just attack. Like, so, a 20-yard pass was worth trying instead of taking an easy point. And that as a defender is, I said it in the Cork sense, it's terrifying because of the pace they apply to it. But the unselfishness of the forward play means that you just can't assume any possession is safe.
And you know what? That means that you have to then go closer. In other words, kind of touch choice. Like I wouldn't be critical. Like I think Rona Mara is an absolute like fabulous player. Like hugely impressive over the last number of years, and an actual gentleman, great fella. If he was slightly tighter, I think, now this is personal, tighter there to the Cork, for the first Cork goal, I think if he was slightly tighter, I think that he wouldn't be able to give that pass. So Luke Meade couldn't have offloaded that pass. But the what was I actually felt was more important in that pass was Luke Meade's dummy pass. So he pretended that he was actually going to, and he didn't, and then he gave it. So it kind of put off the Tipperary defence, and he was kind of like, is he going to give it? Is he not going to give it? So very smart play.
So like the five tip guys that were highlighted there, they didn't close on him because they didn't feel a threat.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing. And then if I'm Ronan Mara playing 3, it's very, very hard when you get pulled further away from the 21 than you want to be, because then you're, am I vacating the box where I need to be back protecting? So it's very, very hard to be critical there. But it's just something out of nothing for me, and I think that I suppose that a bit of abandon in Cork's play, where they're like every play is worth a go. It just makes them so dangerous, because goals will get them in positions in matches where they'll be very, very difficult to peg back, and Limerick couldn't peg them back because the first 15 minutes they were hit for 2. So it's just very interesting. Our producer Collie is wondering whether we're going to crown Cork as the team to beat, but no, listen, I'm not crowning anybody. I'm just saying that the way they're playing at the moment makes it exceptionally hard to defend them. And throw in the pace of Connolly and Barrett, it just makes things really, really interesting.
They definitely don't make the traditional run that forwards make. So that run that Connolly made for the goal, he ran towards the sideline. Like, when you think about it, your sideline is your extra defender. So as a cornerback, you're pushing your corner forward out, and try and get him over the line, essentially. Whereas traditionally, like, forwards want to try and get away from the sideline as a threat. But he, in fairness to him, like, you'd have to admire him. He made a run that nobody expected him, and maybe that's back to the point that you made, Jim, is that, like, they're going from everywhere. Like, so they're not just having like one person inside and trying to get it each side and hopefully get a runner off and pop it. They're going from 40 yards out, they're going from 50 yards out to try to start a run in their own half back line, which is, as you said, very difficult to try and defend, and it keeps you very honest as a back.
It does, and it means you kind of play a little bit tight, and if you're even playing a little bit tight, and cagey as a defender, well then you're probably in the tough spot.
I'm after getting a small bit of abuse over this word that I use. So when I was thinking about like something that managers have been speaking about over the last couple of weeks, they're talking about like how tactical games have been, particularly in the first half or the first 20 minutes, and so on and so forth. So I naturally use the word the nuances of like the game. Okay, so
it's a very academic word.
He started laughing when our producer Collie heard it. He started laughing, and he said a few nice words to me, obviously. But I just wanted to highlight something that I found really, really interesting. So when we talk about when we think about managers, they talk about like the tactical battles. There was one particular player, and it was only for 4 minutes. For the first 4 minutes, I watched why he was out there. I think Stephen Bennett is possibly one of the best forwards in the country inside. If he gets the ball inside, he's lethal.
I agree with you.
It was very, like, I didn't think strange, but it was very interesting that Davey decided to start on wing forward. And I was kind of curious to say, like, well, why is he starting? And the more I thought about it is, the more that Stephen obviously physically is big, he can get around, he's fast, but more so, he's actually very experienced. So here we can see, like, this is literally all within the first 4 minutes of the game. Here he starts out half forward, he's watching the ball, and he follows out. Key thing here, he gets a hit on Duggan to say, hey, listen, I'm here. We're away from home, and this is not a nice place to go to. You're not getting early run us here. Okay, so he gets a hit in. Okay, he gets back and tries to put pressure then on the person that sits in the pocket. Back line. All right. He tracks the ball, and it results then in a poor pass to Shane O'Donnell. Okay, like, and that is just pure aggression out of Stephen Bennett. Probably people wouldn't even have noticed it, but I just found it really interesting. Okay, Stephen Bennett is probably not known for this. Here he is, kind of going relatively deep, and he's watching the danger, and he's looking around. And he's saying, "Well, where is the ball potentially going to go to?" So here he is, block something that is probably not his bread and butter. He blocks it. He gets back in for the tackle to try and get over the ball. He puts in a kind of a half block attempt, which puts Peter Duggan under pressure to shoot off the back foot, and results in a wide.
So in fairness, he was exceptional in the first stages of the game, where he was really firing himself around. I wouldn't associate him with being dynamic around the middle of the field and putting himself around. I do think he's locked in this year. I think Davey is getting a really, really good vein of form out of him. Like, I do like him inside in the full forward line, because I just think he's more dangerous. But when you're getting that kind of a return, nearly 2 blocks in the same passage of play, like, that's leadership for me, and that's where he's at this stage. He is.
Ennis is a hard place to go to, Séamus. Like, Ennis is like, we could talk about Galatasaray and all those other places that are not particularly easy to go to. It is a hard place to go to, and I think there was nearly 20,000 people there, whatever. They were there. He was put out there to make sure like that Waterford got into the game early. So that was a bad pass. I think it was from Jamie. Kieran let it run through his hands. Stephen gets on the ball, potentially a foul.
Yeah, probably a foul. Yeah.
But got on the ball, got on the break. But the key thing here is he's wrestling with 2 Clare hurlers. He uses physical size, strength to make sure it's not easy. And after doing that, because he allowed bodies to get back and get across, a bad wide by Rogers.
And Clare were, they weren't comfortable in the middle of the field. It was really the turnovers that really hurt Waterford, where they were able to launch ball from comfortable positions in the half-back line. The turnovers by Davy Fitzgerald in the half-forward line. The middle was so congested. You're like trying to get the ball over the 265s and the cluster of bodies. That's a theme now in the game. There's a lot of people around there. Working the ball through the middle is difficult, unless you're going to do it with pace, like we saw Kilkenny actually. When they actually do it well, they do it very well. Working the ball through the middle, runners off the shoulder.
Dublin did a great job the weekend, I thought. Like their first goal, I thought, was magic, as in like running full pace, taking on the opportunity, and in fairness, was a fantastic.
But you have to get through. You have to get through that middle, the middle third. It's not even the middle third now. It's just between the 265s. There's just such a glut of bodies, because both half forwards are sitting out, and you're trying to navigate a maze of bodies. If you're carrying the ball in hand, really, what you want to do is you want to get the ball in long and then follow it.
Maybe that's Séamus why Cork are actually doing so well, is because they have bodies around, but they have speed and pace.
Yeah, it's speed.
Like,
it is.
When they get the ball, like, they're gone.
Yeah, and it looks like they have the conditioning now to keep this up over 70, because Tip wilted in the second half, far quicker than I thought they would. But Cork have the conditioning and the bench to keep this going to 70, which is
Joyce is not even playing. Like, will he get back in? He was
Jack O'Connor isn't playing. And he's a fellow who I thought was one of the best Cork forwards coming up. Like, so they have options, like, and good options. If you're bringing Conor Lehan off the bench, like, he's not slow. But they do have to commit to that identity, I think. If you're going to do that, then you're all in. Because you don't pretend to be anything else. You just get the ball in hand and you commit to it. Now you concede when you're turned over, like we were talking about. But you'll probably, is there a mentality of you score 30, we'll score 31? Like, is that
that's Cork's mentality always. Like, if you score like 333, we'll score like 640. Like, they've always had this attitude that we have forwards that will score. And in fairness to them, they're definitely answering a lot of the critics out there that traditionally would have said like that they weren't the hurling team that they once were.
Yeah, they're after putting Limerick in a spot now where Limerick have to win or get something out of the Waterford game.
If they could do us a favour and just draw, we will both be on 5 points. That we can get through. But
we get our tinfoil hats out for conspiracy theories. But like all these scenarios, like the Limerick Cork game last year with a draw could have completely changed the complexion of the championship. So for me, it's the last weekend is so well set up. So, like,
before we go, because we'll have to wrap up, right? Call the top teams in Munster. There's 3. Call the top teams in Leinster.
So the top teams in Munster, I do think Limerick, Clare, and Cork go out. I think that happens, right? Because I think Limerick beat Waterford. In Leinster, so Kilkenny are after getting back on track, right? Dublin are in a good position. They're going to find it hard against Galway. And then the permutations get tricky because so they're on 5, and if Galway win, then the permutations and combinations there get hard for them with Wexford. So I wouldn't with a huge amount of confidence say who's going to be in the Leinster final after next weekend because it's that tight.
And that's the way you want it.
Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, it comes to a close. So it was, again, Séamus, great to see you. And thanks very much for giving us some insight into your hands. As I was waiting.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up, Nolly. Yeah.
Don't forget that Dean is on also today with the GA Football Analysis Show. I'm sure he'll be discussing some of the downfalls in Derry, and Kerry were flying in Clarity, so he'll give you a much better insight than we will into that. But listen, thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.